Do you ever feel like you've seen your brother?
No.
Or that he's come to you or anything?
No.
No? Would it scare you?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah? Do ghosts in general scare you, or that would scare you?
That would probably scare me more than any ghost would.
Yeah.
Granted, I don't do a lot of horror. I could not even.
Welcome down the rabbit hole. Paul Ferguson was recently sentenced to 30 years to life in prison for participating in the torture that eventually killed his 15-year-old autistic brother.
That's my friends who like to play Five Nights at Freddy's, much less play it myself.
It must be hard for you. You know what? Because I don't care what people say. I know that you have to have loved your brother. And even though you said that you didn't feel you loved him enough, I mean, it's still your brother. That was your blood.
Yeah, maybe I didn't feel like I loved him, but deep down, you can always be angry with a sibling. You can be frustrated. You can be just so beyond done. But deep down, you know, you still love them. You still care about them.
I'm continuing to work on my deep dive regarding Shonda Vander Ark and Paul Ferguson, but I had to pause that video to put out a passionate call for concern over the woman attempting to control and manipulate Paul Ferguson in prison. Prison today is different from what most of us picture in our minds as being the kind of punishment we've watched play out in movies like Shawshank Redemption. Despite Paul's heinous crimes and seeming lack of remorse, he will have ongoing access to a tablet, much like an iPad. He will pay to text and call family and friends all day long. He will be able to play video games and watch movies. In some manner, this functions to keep prisons more docile and then potentially more safe. But for those on the outside who never starved and abused a sibling with a disability, it feels unnecessary. It feels unfair. It reeks of unjust as we think of Timothy Ferguson dying alone on the floor of his closet. I personally have a deep interest in dissecting what is happening with Paul Ferguson. Yes, he is a monster who contributed to the death of his vulnerable younger brother. I don't like him. His personality is irritating, inappropriate, and self-centered. He has traits of a psychopath, in my opinion, and yet my deep dive is going to look at the factors I believe should qualify Paul for an autism diagnosis. You heard me right. I know that's controversial, and many of you will be yelling from your couch. He already had an evaluation by the court, and he doesn't meet criteria. Yes, I am fully aware, and my deep dive is going to look at how the court may be wrong, and has been wrong many times before. I continue to have a strong interest in assessing cases like Paul's and Nicholas Godejohn's to look at similarities and how being affected by autism could contribute to the commission of these crimes and or deeply affect the way a person is perceived at trial, leading to a placement in a facility that is all wrong for a person with needs like Paul's or Nicholas's. But that's a long argument, and I need to save it for another video. This video is all about how, although I don't like Paul and don't aspire to give him the best, most healthy experience in prison, I do believe we are watching an autistic man with certain special needs being taken advantage of by another predator. But this predator is living outside of the prison walls. And this predator reminds me an awful lot of Shonda. if I'm being honest with you. So Paul has already been primed to believe in and accept direction and manipulation from people like this before.
Can I ask you a straight up question? Go ahead. Because you can't have, sexual relations with me, if a guy wanted to give you a blowjob, would you let him?
No.
If you're questioning what's going on with these clips, they are recorded jail calls between Paul and his new fiancé, whom everyone is calling Jenny. But no, Jenny has never met Paul. She didn't know him before he went to prison. Here's what happened. Shortly after Paul Ferguson was found guilty of the crime of contributing to Timothy's death, Jenny began contacting Paul through the prison pen pal system, and she quickly weaseled her way into phone calls and sexualized texts with Paul. Within a few weeks of talking to each other, Paul and this woman became engaged. Here's one of their first phone calls from the very beginning. We can tell that this woman already understands that Paul's intelligence and ability to understand things around him, it's clearly affected and not at the level in which she is operating. She's quite older than Paul. I have not gone down the rabbit hole to figure out exactly who she is because I believe that on some level she deserves her privacy. She was not involved in this murder. However, people are saying she's significantly older than Paul, and many are questioning her motivations.
Be monitored. If you believe this should be a private call, please hang up and follow facility instructions to register this number as a private number. To consent to this recorded call, press 1. To disconnect, press 2.
Hello? Hi.
Hello.
Oh, my God. Are you okay?
I'm doing, I guess. I've talked to some other friends, so...
Oh, my goodness. I had seen it, and it's, I've been following the whole thing, and I don't want to have to put you through any of the stuff that you've been talking about for so long, but, I was able to relate to a lot of your situations and stuff like that, and I don't agree with anything. I can't even tell you how many people were against me and my feelings on the whole situation. And I just felt gravitated towards you because I felt like, I don't know, I guess maybe just that you didn't have the proper support. And I don't know, I just tried reaching out and I figured out how to do it. It was wild, but
So this is one of Jenny's first calls with Paul. If you're wondering where I got them from, the person who was originally able to obtain these phone calls has a YouTube channel, and her name is Zav Girl. So some of the calls come from her channel, others come from different channels and TikToks. However, they all originally came from Zav. And some of the quotes that you'll be seeing up on the screen are from people responding to the phone calls, either on Reddit, on other platforms, on TikTok, and I just want to give you some sense of what people are saying because they're basically saying what we're all thinking. All right, so Jenny is having one of these initial calls with Paul, and in my opinion, she's kind of setting him up, even starting the grooming process of creating a relationship with him in which she tries to manipulate him into believing this was all a matter of chance and she's just innocent and lovely and wanting to create a positive and good relationship with someone she really just feels bad for. She's relating to Paul on every single level. He's not a bad person. He didn't really do anything wrong, and anything he says or does is okay by her because this relationship isn't about being in a real reciprocal relationship. It's about getting to Paul, manipulating him, and eventually we will start to see the control come out.
like I said, it's really, really strange. Pretty much most of your phone calls are being released, on the media.
YouTube, Zab Girl, as I've heard.
Yes, I can't even believe that we're talking. I'm excited that you called me. I don't even know if you were able to get my pictures, because when I sent things through, I got a notification that some stuff wasn't accepted, and I was just like, I don't even know what he's getting.
I got one on the 23rd that was removed for some reason. I don't know if that was from you or what, but
Yeah, they removed that, and then I basically resent the same message with another picture that they didn't delete. So I don't know how you get these messages, but there is, another picture in there. But of course, I didn't give my stamp back. They didn't give me my stamp back. Like you have to basically get these stamps, and that's how you,
stamps are non-refundable. It says that the moment I happened the e-messages app.
So where are you now? When are you getting transferred? Like, what's going on?
I'm currently still in Muskegon County Jail.
Okay.
I don't know when I could be gone by Friday. I could be gone by next Friday. All I know is that Friday is when as some people call it, the meat wagon rides out.
Oh, my goodness. And you sound like you're okay, though. That makes me feel so much better. I mean, I know that you're probably not, but the fact that you're composed and, that's super important. And I'm so happy to know you're not letting yourself fall apart right now. Maybe inside you are. But
I let myself fall apart earlier. I don't want to do it again.
I know, and that's good. That's good. That means you're strong. It's like, I don't know, I'm what you call, like, and I'm sure you've seen this, like an empath and all these different things, and I just felt this connection to you, and I was like, I'm going to try to reach out to him, and if it's meant to happen, it will. And at first I was like, I'm going to have to travel to Michigan to see if I can actually go and see him in jail or not, but I'm just really upset with how this all went down, and I can't even fathom how you must feel. And I don't agree with what the media says. I don't really listen to the media anyway with anything.
Jenny is already setting up, hey, Paul, it's you and me against the world. The entire media is after you. I'm fighting with people over you. This is so inappropriate, this kind of rhetoric to a very young man who likely is on the autism spectrum, who can obviously be somewhat gullible, who has not experienced and matured in the way that most people his age have. Regardless of the horrible things that Paul participated in, I still see a real lack of ability to use his cognition and executive functioning skills to make appropriate decisions. And now we have this woman who I believe, in my opinion, I'm going to call out as some kind of a predator coming after Paul in prison. Her motivations are still unknown, but there are so many calls in which I am hearing very inappropriate interactions between Paul and this woman. Let's continue on with this call a little bit further, and then we'll move on to other calls that really have me scratching my head.
But, I was like, I know if I hear his voice, I'm going to know if he's what I think he is, and you are. You don't sound like some crazy person. So,
Thank you very
I think
much.
Seriously, I think you were put into a situation. And honestly, the way that I have, assessed this whole thing is I thought to myself, because I didn't have a good upbringing, and I thought to myself, well, what if I was in a situation like that? There would be a million things going through my mind, even though the media put out, that you and your mom were so close. There's so much that I felt was just not known because it's impossible for everything to be known.
Yeah.
And, and especially because you were so young, it's like, people say, oh, well, if you're 19, you're an adult. If you're 18, you're an adult. But you know what? Having, like I said, I had dysfunction in my family growing up. Sometimes, if that doesn't, I don't know, I don't feel like the law just because they say you're a certain age. Because you know what? No matter what, even when you're older, because I'm a little bit older than you, your family and your parents, especially the people you're supposed to be able to depend on and look up to, whether we like it or not, sometimes we just think that they're right because they're our parents, but they're not. And as you get older, you'll start, and I'm sure you're probably at this point already, but
Okay, now some people are saying, and I'm not going to bother confirming it right now, but I'm just going to let you know that there are rumors that Jenny is around the same age as Shonda and that she has a child around the same age as Paul. If this is all true, it further lends to my deeply held concern about the psychology of this entire relationship. First and foremost, we have to question what's going on with Jenny, that she even wants to reach out to any prisoner within the United States prison system. There must be something going on in her life that would lead her down a path of wanting to have this kind of inappropriate relationship. Many of you are aware that I recently did a deep dive on a case in which we listened to a woman who considers herself addicted to dating serial killers.
And I just was worried. I don't know. I like killed animals and like collected maggots in jars.
Did you say you killed animals?
I killed multiple animals, yeah.
Okay, weird already, right? Okay, so Grant's girlfriend, the first thing that she admits to is she has a long history of like disturbing mental health problems. She says that when she was a child, she unalived some animals. She would also do things like collect insects, and I mean, it's not as weird, like keep them in jars. But also, she talks about how someone tried to attack her, a male tried to attack her when she got a little bit older, and she attacked him with a knife and ended up stabbing him.
You're currently in a relationship with the webcam killer, Grant Amato. For those who aren't familiar with him, what can you say about his crimes?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Honestly, it's pathetic. But I think that the motive is very, very... It's different than what people think. It wasn't just for her, you know. He was spiraling down already. He lost his job. He got arrested for grand larceny from stealing medication from the hospital or something and sedating his patients. And from there, he kind of got caught in he spiraled down into delusion and lost sight of reality and lost sight of the future and like his whole life.
She talked extensively about her relationship with certain well-known men in prison. It was obvious she got off on the attention of doing these interviews. It was also obvious she had some very deep psychological problems herself that really aligned with the men she was speaking to. And right now, I'm really suspicious of what's going on with Jenny.
You start to realize, no, they're just people too. And, whether we like it or not,
I'd say physically I'm maybe 21, but mentally I'm far younger.
Okay, so even in this very first call, both Paul and Jenny are recognizing the issues with Paul's maturity level, as well as some cognitive and socialization issues. I know many of you want to argue about this, and I do understand that the evaluation by the court found, and I believe this is exactly what they had to say, that although Paul currently does exhibit signs and symptoms in line with the diagnosis of autism, the court found that it was likely due to environmental aspects rather than having the actual condition. Okay? Now, I find that incredibly interesting because it is acknowledging that right here, right now, he is showing the signs and symptoms of autism. And yet they couldn't really go back and find the appropriate interventions and evaluations that were done showing that Paul had this problem from a very early age. Now, when I deep dive, we're going to talk about why this is the case and how this happens to many people, many children other than Paul. But the point of it all being, I think it's obvious. We don't even need an evaluator to tell us that something is going on with Paul. He is not at the level of a 21-year-old man. And we're going to see that more and more as we continue to go through additional phone calls. And we can easily tell that Jenny sees it too, but it doesn't bother her. And something is really wrong with that.
Well, I want you to know that you're going to have a friend in me forever, and I'm so disappointed with this whole thing. But the fact that you replied to me, I was like, he's going to think I'm just some crazy girl that's just rating him. And I figured you probably got 50 other people messaging you. But, have you had crazy?
Guess what, Jenny? Paul Ferguson does have several people writing and communicating with him. And for all of you out there that don't know about this, 2 of them are named Randy and JoJo. These are people who eventually Jenny will come to see as competition and want them completely out of Paul's life. Sad but true, Jenny is here for one reason only, to control and manipulate Paul. Whereas, and we'll hear about this later, both JoJo and Randy are older individuals who came into Paul's life after they heard about his plight, because both of them have children who are on the autism spectrum. And they call what their children have Asperger's. That's not a diagnosis that we use any longer, but I can see why they would be so likely to feel sympathy for Paul. We have a lot of phone calls, again from Zav Girl, in which Paul is speaking to Randy and JoJo, and it's clear that they have a lot of care and concern for him. It's also clear that they have no diabolical or vile intentions towards him. They literally come forward to try to help Paul in any way they possibly can. They clearly believe he deserves an autism diagnosis, and they want people to know that he would have been easily manipulated by Shonda. It doesn't mean that they don't want him to have any kind of consequences for his actions. And I know there are a lot of people out there who follow this story who are very annoyed with both Randy and JoJo. And yet, I think it's clear that their intentions come from a place of positivity. It comes from having a child they've watched struggle and wanting to help Paul when they realize that much of what he's exhibiting reminds them of their own children. But Jenny isn't like that, and she's not here, in my opinion, to really help Paul.
One of them actually wrote to the judge and explained 5 key, characteristics of Asperger's syndrome. And I guess some people might check 1 or 2 boxes, but I checked all 5.
And you want to know something? When you go through something as traumatic as you did, whether a doctor wants to say you have it or not, whether you have it or not, you know what? You have to kind of, I would imagine in my own experience, the things I've been through, where it's almost kind of like you have to mentally check out, because that's how you mentally survive and get through situations.
We hear Jenny not really wanting to address whether or not Paul has autism because that doesn't fit into her plans and what she's after here. This call goes on for quite a long time, and you can check out some other channels to listen to the entirety of it. But I'm going to move on and let you listen to some other calls after Paul and Jenny eventually get engaged, which continue to demonstrate how inappropriate Jenny is with Paul.
No, I know that I'll definitely have to protect my ass in prison, though, from what I've heard. We hear lots drop the scope, as they say. Oh, I'm so nervous for you. I can't. I just, yeah. Like I said, I have titanium. People have told me I have titanium knees. If you remember that. Yeah. Yep. Yes, I remember that. It wasn't even that I need him in the crotch. It was that the dude was running in the hall, wasn't watching where he was going, and ran into my knee. He was down for a good 5 to 10 minutes. And when he finally managed to speak properly, not this high, squeaky bullshit.
In this specific clip, Jenny is literally asking Paul not to have sexual relations in prison without her. There are so many other jail calls in which they go into some of these topics. They talk about whether or not they may have a possibility of having conjugal visits, which I'm absolutely sure Jenny must know is not possible, but is kind of leading Paul on in that way. It's clear that Paul is just not of a cognition to be talking to someone like Jenny. It's like an adult talking to a small child. Okay, it's here, friends, that we're going to take a break, and you will get part 2 of this video out tomorrow. Only because of the length of time it takes me to upload, I'm going to have to break the video into 2 parts. I hope that you'll join me again as we continue to deep dive what the heck is going on with the psychology of Shonda and Paul Ferguson, and how can we work to prevent another tragedy like what happened to Timothy.